mother slept with a rich man to save her only daughter's life, but what happened next made her regret. Hello, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. As a single mother, Grace had fought for every moment of Rachel's happiness. She had been only 27 when Joseph, her husband, walked out on them, leaving her to raise Rachel alone. The pain was terrible, but Grace had no time to cry. Rachel needed her more than ever. In the years that followed, Grace worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices before sunrise and selling food at the market until dark. She gave up her own dreams so Rachel could have the life Grace never had. It was hard work that made her hands rough and her back ache, but it was worth it. She'd seen it in Rachel's eyes, the joy when she brought home good grades, the way her daughter would smile when she talked about becoming a doctor someday. Grace had sold her wedding ring to buy Rachel's school books. She had skipped meals so Rachel could eat. She had worn the same old dress for 3 years so Rachel could have a new school uniform. Every sacrifice was made with love. For 8 long years, Grace had managed to keep them safe. Their small apartment wasn't much, but it was home. Rachel was healthy, smart, and happy. Grace told herself that as long as she could work, everything would be okay. But one afternoon everything changed. Grace was at the market, stirring her pot of rice and stew, when her phone started ringing. She saw it was Rachel's school calling. "Hello, this is Grace," she answered. "Mrs. Grace, this is Mrs. Johnson from Rachel's school. You need to come to the hospital right away. Rachel collapsed during class and we called an ambulance." Grace's cooking spoon fell from her hand and clattered to the ground. What happened to my daughter?" "We don't know yet. The ambulance took her to City General Hospital. Please come quickly." Grace's hands were shaking as she turned off her cooking fire. "Mrs. Rebecca, please watch my things. I have to go to the hospital." She ran through the busy streets, her heart beating so fast she could hardly breathe. Cars honked at her as she crossed roads without looking. All she could think about was Rachel. At the hospital, Grace found her daughter lying on a bed in the emergency room. Rachel looked so small and weak. Her skin was very pale and she had tubes in her nose to help her breathe. "Mama?" Rachel whispered when she saw Grace. "I'm here, my baby. I'm here." Grace took Rachel's hand and squeezed it gently. "Everything will be okay." After many long hours, Dr. William came to talk to Grace. He was a tall man in his 40s with kind eyes, but his face looked very serious. "Mrs. Grace," he said carefully, "we have run many tests on your daughter. I'm afraid the news is not good." Grace felt her whole body go cold. "What's wrong with my Rachel?" Dr. Williams sat down next to her. "Your daughter has a serious heart problem. One of the main arteries to her heart is blocked. This means her heart can't pump blood properly to the rest of her body." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Can you fix it, doctor? Can you make her better?" "Yes, we can help her. But she needs a big surgery right away. It's called heart surgery and it will fix the blocked artery. Without this surgery, Rachel might not survive more than 2 weeks." "Then do the surgery." Grace cried. "Please save my daughter." Dr. William looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Grace, this surgery is very expensive. It costs $15,000. This includes the surgery, the medicines, and staying in the hospital afterward. Do you have that much money?" Grace felt like the world was spinning around her. $15,000. She had only saved $300 in her whole life. "Doctor, please," Grace begged with tears streaming down her face. "I don't have that much money, but I'll find it somehow. Please help my daughter. She's all I have in this world." "I understand how you feel," the doctor said sadly. "But the hospital needs the money before we can do the surgery. You have 1 week to find it. After that, Rachel's heart will be too weak, and it will be too late to save her." Grace felt like she couldn't breathe. 1 week to find $15,000? It seemed impossible. "Please, doctor. There must be something you can do. I'll work for free at the hospital. I'll clean every room. I'll do anything." Dr. William shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Grace. I wish I could change the rules, but I can't. The hospital needs the money first." That night, Grace sat by Rachel's bed, holding her daughter's hand. Rachel was sleeping, but her breathing was weak and difficult. "I promise you, my baby," Grace whispered. "I will find a way to save you. I will not let you die." The next morning, Grace started asking everyone she knew for help. First, she went to her landlord, Mr. Gabriel. "Sir, my daughter is dying. I need $15,000 for her heart surgery. Can you please help me?" Mr. Gabriel shook his head. "Grace, I'm sorry about Rachel, but I don't have that kind of money. Actually, you still owe me rent from last month." Grace went to her old friend Susan, who worked at the bank. "Susan, please. Rachel will die if I don't get this money." Susan hugged her friend and cried with her. "Grace, if I had that much money, I would give it to you right away. But I only earn $500 a month. I can give you $50, but that's all I have." Grace thanked her friend and took the money, but she knew it wasn't nearly enough. She went to their church and talked to Pastor Daniel. "Pastor, please help me. God can't want to take away my only daughter." Pastor Daniel was a good man, but the church was small and poor. "Sister Grace, we will pray for Rachel and I will ask the congregation to help. But our church is small. We might be able to collect $200, but that's all." Grace went to the market and begged other traders. "Please help me save my daughter's life." Some people gave her $5, some gave $10. Mrs. Rebecca gave her $20 and cried with her. But after 3 days of begging, Grace had only collected $400. On the fourth day, Grace went to the bank to ask for a loan. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Grace," the bank manager said. "You don't have a house or car that we can take if you can't pay back the loan. We can't give you that much money." Grace even went to her ex-husband's family. She found Joseph's brother, Samuel, at his shop. "Samuel, please. I know Joseph left us, but Rachel is still his daughter. She's dying. Can you help us?" Samuel looked angry. "Grace, my brother told us you were a difficult wife. That's why he left. We don't owe you anything." Grace left his shop crying. She had been refused by everyone. On the fifth day, Rachel's condition got worse. Her lips were turning blue and she could barely speak. "Mama," Rachel whispered weakly, "am I going to die?" Grace held her daughter tight and cried. "No, my baby. Mama will find a way to save you. I promise." But deep in her heart, Grace was losing hope. She had asked everyone she knew. She had begged on the streets. She had sold everything she owned, her jewelry, her phone, even her cooking pots. But she still only had $800. Time was running out and Grace didn't know what to do. She sat in the hospital corridor, crying and praying for a miracle. She had no idea that someone had been watching her struggle. She had no idea that her desperate situation had caught the attention of a man who would soon make her an offer that would change her life forever. But not in the way she hoped. On the sixth day, as Grace sat crying in the hospital waiting room, a tall man in an expensive suit walked up to her. He was about 40 years old, with gold rings on his fingers and a shiny watch on his wrist. Grace had seen him around the neighborhood before. Everyone knew Mr. David. He was one of the richest men in the area. "Mrs. Grace," he said in a smooth voice, sitting down next to her. "I heard about your daughter's situation. I'm very sorry." Grace looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Mr. David? What are you doing here?" "I come to this hospital sometimes to help people who are in trouble," he lied smoothly. "I've been watching you these past few days. I see how much you love your daughter." Grace wiped her tears. "Sir, my Rachel is dying. The doctors say she needs surgery, but I don't have the money. I've asked everyone I know, but no one can help me." Mr. David nodded sympathetically. $15,000 is a lot of money. "But you know, Grace, I've always admired you. You're a strong, beautiful woman who works so hard to take care of her daughter." Grace felt uncomfortable with the way he was looking at her, but she was too desperate to care. "Mr. David, if you know any way I can get help, please tell me. I'll do anything to save Rachel." Mr. David smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Anything, Grace? That's interesting." "Yes, anything. I'll work for you for free. I'll clean your house, cook your food, do whatever you need. Just please help me save my daughter." Mr. David was quiet for a moment, pretending to think. But the truth was, he had been planning this conversation for days. He had been watching Grace struggle, waiting for the perfect moment when she would be desperate enough to accept his offer. "Grace," he said slowly, "I can give you the $15,000 tonight. Your daughter can have her surgery tomorrow." Grace's heart jumped with hope. "Really? You would do that for us?" "Oh, Mr. David, thank you. Thank you so much. I promise I'll pay you back somehow." "Well," Mr. David said, his voice becoming darker, "there is one small thing you would need to do for me." "Anything, sir. I'll do anything." Mr. David moved closer to her and spoke quietly so no one else could hear. "I want you to spend one night with me, Grace. In my house. In my bedroom." Grace felt like someone had poured cold water on her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "What? What did you say?" "You heard me correctly. One night with me and I'll give you all the money you need to save Rachel. It's a simple deal." Grace stood up quickly, her face full of shock and anger. "How dare you? How can you say such a thing to me? I'm a decent woman." Mr. David remained calm. Grace, sit down. People are looking at you. I don't care if people are looking. You are a disgusting man. I would never do such a thing, not even to save. Grace stopped talking as she realized what she had almost said. Mr. David smiled coldly. Not even to save Rachel? Are you sure about that, Grace? Because tomorrow is your last day. After tomorrow, it will be too late for surgery. Grace felt sick to her stomach. There has to be another way. I can't. I won't. There is no other way, Grace. You've spent 5 days asking everyone for help. No one gave you the money you need. I'm the only person who can save Rachel now. Grace sat back down, her hands shaking. This is wrong. What you're asking me to do is wrong. Many things in life are wrong, Grace. But sometimes we have to choose between what's right and what's necessary. What's more important to you, your pride or your daughter's life? Grace started crying again. Please don't ask me to do this. Please find another way to help us. Mr. David stood up to leave. Grace, I'm not forcing you to do anything. The choice is yours. My phone number is 08035550147. Call me before midnight tonight if you want to save Rachel. If not. He shrugged his shoulders and walked away. Grace sat alone in the waiting room, feeling like her whole world was falling apart. She went to check on Rachel, who was getting weaker every hour. Mama, Rachel whispered, did you find the money for my surgery? Grace forced a smile. Don't worry about that, my baby. Just rest and get better. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Mr. David's terrible offer. How could he ask her to do such a thing? How could anyone be so cruel? But then she looked at Rachel, struggling to breathe, and her heart broke all over again. What kind of mother would let her only child die to protect her own reputation? Grace paced around the small hospital room all night. She prayed, she cried, she argued with herself. God, please show me another way, she whispered. Please don't let this be my only choice. But as the hours passed, no miracle came. No one called with good news. No rich relative suddenly appeared to help them. At 11:30 p.m., Grace picked up her phone with shaking hands. She had 30 minutes to make the most difficult decision of her life. She looked at Rachel one more time. Her beautiful, innocent daughter who wanted to become a doctor and help people. Rachel had never hurt anyone in her whole life. She didn't deserve to die because her mother was too proud to save her. With tears streaming down her face, Grace dialed Mr. David's number. Hello? His voice answered after 2 rings. Grace could barely speak. Mr. David, it's Grace. Ah, Grace. I was wondering if you would call. Have you made your decision? Grace closed her eyes and felt a part of her soul die. Yes. I accept your offer. But I have one condition. What condition? You must pay the hospital first, before anything else happens. I want to see Rachel's surgery scheduled before I come to your house. Mr. David laughed softly. Very smart, Grace. Don't worry, I'm a man of my word. Meet me at the hospital's finance office at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll pay for everything and then tomorrow night you'll come to my house. Grace felt like she was going to be sick. Okay. And Grace? Don't tell anyone about our arrangement. This stays between you and me. The phone went dead. Grace sat in the dark hospital room, staring at her sleeping daughter, wondering what kind of person she had just agreed to become. She had no idea that this was only the beginning of her nightmare. She had no idea that Mr. David had no intention of keeping his word. She had no idea that by trying to save Rachel, she was about to destroy both of their lives in ways she never could have imagined. But for now, all Grace could think about was that Rachel would live. Whatever happened to her didn't matter as long as her daughter survived. Outside the hospital window, the city slept peacefully, unaware that a mother's love was about to lead her into the darkest chapter of her life. The next morning came too quickly. Grace had not slept at all. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. At 8 a.m. sharp, she met Mr. David at the hospital's finance office. He arrived in a big black car that was shinier than anything Grace had ever seen. He wore another expensive suit and smelled like costly perfume. When he smiled at her, Grace felt her stomach turn. Good morning, Grace. You look tired. I couldn't sleep, Grace replied quietly, not looking at him. Well, let's get this business finished so your daughter can have her surgery. Mr. David walked into the finance office like he owned the place. Grace followed behind him, feeling like she was walking to her own funeral. Good morning, sir, said Mrs. Sarah, the finance officer. How can I help you? I want to pay for Rachel Williams' heart surgery. The full amount $15,000. Mrs. Sarah looked surprised. Very few people could pay such a large amount at once. Certainly, sir. Are you a relative of the patient? I'm a family friend, Mr. David lied smoothly. I want to help this poor woman save her daughter. Grace watched in silence as Mr. David pulled out a thick roll of money from his briefcase. He counted out $15,000 in cash like it was nothing. Grace had never seen so much money in her entire life. Here you are, he said to Mrs. Sarah. Please schedule the surgery for today. Mrs. Sarah counted the money twice, then filled out the paperwork. The surgery is now paid for in full. Dr. William can operate this afternoon. Grace felt a mixture of relief and terror. Rachel would live, but tonight? Thank you, sir, Mrs. Sarah said to Mr. David. This is very generous of you. It's my pleasure to help, Mr. David replied, then turned to Grace. Mrs. Grace, I'll pick you up at 8 p.m. tonight. Be ready. Grace nodded, unable to speak. After Mr. David left, Grace ran to tell Rachel the good news. My baby. You're going to have your surgery today. The doctor is going to fix your heart. Rachel's weak face lit up with joy. Really, Mama? How did you get the money? Grace's smile faltered for a moment. Don't worry about that, my love. Just focus on getting better. Dr. William came to prepare Rachel for surgery. This is wonderful news, Mrs. Grace. We can operate this afternoon. Rachel will be in surgery for about 4 hours, and then she'll need to rest for a few days. Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. As they wheeled Rachel into the operating room, she called out, I love you, Mama. I love you too, my precious girl. See you soon. Grace sat in the waiting room for the next 4 hours, praying and crying. At 6 p.m., Dr. William came out with a big smile. Mrs. Grace, the surgery was perfect. Rachel is going to be fine. Her heart is now working properly, and she should make a full recovery. Grace fell to her knees and thanked God. Rachel was alive. Her daughter was going to live. But as she watched the clock move toward 8 p.m., Grace's happiness turned to dread. She had kept her part of the bargain. Rachel was saved. Now she had to keep her promise to Mr. David. At exactly 8 p.m., a black car pulled up outside the hospital. Grace kissed Rachel, who was still sleeping after the surgery, and walked outside. Mr. David was waiting in the back seat. Get in, Grace. Grace got into the car with shaking hands. The driver started moving, and Grace watched the hospital disappear behind them. You did the right thing, Grace, Mr. David said. Your daughter is alive because of the choice you made. Grace stared out the window and said nothing. They drove to the richest part of the city where all the big houses were. Mr. David's house was like a palace. It had a large gate, beautiful gardens, and more rooms than Grace could count. Welcome to my home, Mr. David said as they walked inside. The house was full of expensive furniture, gold decorations, and paintings on the walls. Grace had never seen such wealth in her life. Would you like something to drink? Mr. David asked. No, thank you. I just want to get this over with. Mr. David laughed. Grace, you don't need to be so frightened. I'm not going to hurt you. We're both adults here. But Grace felt like a trapped animal. This man had used her daughter's life to force her into this situation. How could he pretend it was normal? Can I call the hospital first? To check on Rachel? Of course. The phone is over there. Grace called and spoke to the nurse. Rachel is sleeping peacefully, the nurse said. The surgery went very well. She should wake up tomorrow morning. Grace hung up the phone and turned to face Mr. David. He was pouring himself a glass of expensive wine. Now then, Grace, shall we go upstairs? Grace felt like her legs were made of stone, but she forced herself to follow him up the grand staircase to his bedroom. The room was huge, with a bed bigger than Grace's entire apartment. What happened next was something Grace would try to forget for the rest of her life. Mr. David treated her not like a human being, but like something he had bought and owned. Every moment felt like torture. Afterward, as Grace sat on the edge of the bed crying silently, Mr. David got dressed and smiled at her. That was very nice, Grace. You can get dressed now. My driver will take you back to the hospital. Grace put on her clothes with shaking hands, feeling dirty and ashamed. She couldn't look at herself in the mirror. Remember, Grace, Mr. David said as she headed for the door, this is our secret. If you tell anyone what happened here tonight, it will be very bad for you and Rachel. Grace nodded and left without saying a word. During the car ride back to the hospital, Grace cried until she had no more tears left. She had saved Rachel's life, but she felt like she had lost her own soul in the process. When she got back to the hospital, Rachel was awake. Mama, you're back. The nurses said my surgery went perfectly. Grace forced a smile and hugged her daughter. Yes, my baby. You're going to be fine now. Mama, why are you crying? Are you happy? Yes, Rachel. I'm crying because I'm so happy that you're okay. But Grace wasn't crying from happiness. She was crying because she knew that the worst part wasn't over. She could see it in Mr. David's eyes before she left. This wasn't going to be the end. She had made a deal with the devil to save her daughter, and devils never honor their bargains. 3 days later, Rachel was strong enough to go home. Grace was helping her pack when her phone rang. The number looked familiar and Grace's heart sank. Hello, Grace. This is David. I hope Rachel is feeling better. What do you want? Our deal is finished. Mr. David laughed softly. Oh, Grace. Our deal is just beginning? Grace felt her blood turn cold. What do you mean? I did what you asked. Rachel had her surgery. We're even now. Even? Mr. David laughed again. Grace, I think you misunderstood our arrangement. I didn't just pay for Rachel's surgery, I invested in you. And now I want to protect my investment. I don't understand what you're talking about. Please leave us alone. Grace, I have something that belongs to you. Something you might want back. Grace's heart started beating fast. What are you talking about? Check your phone. I'm sending you a message right now. Grace heard a beep on her phone. When she opened the message, she almost dropped the phone in shock. It was an unclothed photograph of her in Mr. David's bedroom that terrible night. Did you get my message, Grace? Grace couldn't speak. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. I have many more photos, Grace. Very clear photos. Would you like me to send them to your church? Or maybe to Rachel's school? I'm sure the teachers would be very interested to see what kind of mother Rachel has. You took pictures? Grace whispered, trying not to let Rachel hear her. Of course I took pictures. How else can I remember our beautiful night together? Grace felt sick to her stomach. What do you want from me? I want to see you again, Grace. Tomorrow night. Same time. No. I won't do it. Our deal is finished. Grace, think carefully about what you're saying. Do you want everyone in your neighborhood to see these photos? Do you want Rachel to see them when she's older? Grace looked at Rachel, who was happily packing her few belongings, excited to go home. Her daughter had no idea what was happening. Please, Grace begged quietly. Please don't do this to me. The choice is yours, Grace. Be at my house tomorrow at 8 p.m., or these photos will be everywhere by 9 p.m. Your church, your market friends, Rachel's school, everyone will know what you did. The phone went dead. Grace sat on the hospital chair, staring at the terrible photo on her phone. How could she have been so stupid? How could she not have seen this coming? Mama, are you okay? Rachel asked. You look very pale. I'm fine, my baby. Just tired. That night, Grace couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about the photos. What if people saw them? What if Rachel found out what she had done? How could she face anyone at church or at the market? But how could she go back to that terrible man? How could she let him hurt her again? The next day, Grace tried to act normal as she and Rachel went home to their small apartment. Rachel was so happy to be home, talking about going back to school and seeing her friends. Mama, thank you for saving my life, Rachel said as they sat together that evening. I know it must have been very hard to get the money for my surgery. You're the best mother in the world. Grace's heart broke all over again. If only Rachel knew the truth. At 7:30 p.m., Grace's phone rang. Good evening, Grace. I trust you've made the right decision. Grace looked at Rachel, who was doing her homework at the small table. Her daughter looked so peaceful and happy. I'll be there, Grace said quietly. Good girl. I knew you were smart. Grace told Rachel she had to go help a friend with something. I'll be back later tonight, my baby. Lock the door and don't open it for anyone. Okay, Mama. Be safe. This time, when Grace got to Mr. David's house, he was not alone. Another man was there, a big, mean-looking man who didn't say anything, just watched. Grace, meet Johnson. He works for me. He's here to make sure our business goes smoothly. Grace felt even more frightened. Why is he here? Insurance, Grace. To make sure you don't try to do anything foolish. That night was even worse than the first time. Mr. David was rougher, meaner. He seemed to enjoy Grace's fear and tears. You see, Grace, he said afterward, you belong to me now. Whenever I call you come. Whenever I want you, you'll be here. This is wrong, Grace said through her tears. You can't do this to me. I can do whatever I want, Grace. Who's going to stop me? The police? Your church? Your friends? They'll all see those photos if you try to report me. Grace went home that night feeling more broken than ever. But the worst part was pretending everything was normal in front of Rachel. This pattern continued for 2 weeks. Every few days Mr. David would call, and Grace would have to go to his house. Each time was worse than the last. Grace started losing weight. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. "Mama, are you sick?" Rachel asked one morning. "You don't look good." "I'm just working too hard, my baby. Don't worry about me." But Grace was more than sick, she was dying inside. She felt like she had lost herself completely. Then one evening something even worse happened. Mr. David called with a new demand. "Grace, I need some money from you." "Money? What money?" "You know I don't have any money." "You'll find some. I want $500 by tomorrow night." $500? That's impossible. I don't earn that much in a whole month. That's your problem, Grace. Sell something. Borrow from someone. I don't care how you get it, but bring me $500 tomorrow, or those photos go public. Grace was confused. "I don't understand. Why do you need money from me? You're rich." Mr. David laughed coldly. "It's not about needing the money, Grace. It's about controlling you. I want to see how far you'll go to protect your reputation." Grace hung up the phone and looked around their tiny apartment. What could she sell? They had nothing valuable. Their furniture was old and broken. She had already sold all her jewelry to try to pay for Rachel's surgery. The next morning, Grace went to the market and talked to Mrs. Rebecca. "Mama, I need to borrow $500. It's an emergency." Mrs. Rebecca looked worried. $500? Grace, that's a lot of money. I don't have that much. What kind of emergency? Grace couldn't tell her the truth. It's for Rachel's medicine. Special medicine the doctor says she needs." "Oh my dear. I wish I could help you. I can give you $50, but that's all I have saved." Grace tried other friends, but no one had that much money. Finally, in desperation, she went to a money lender, a dangerous man who charged very high interest. "I need to borrow $500, she told him. "That will cost you $700 to pay back, and you have 1 month. If you don't pay, there will be serious consequences." Grace knew it was dangerous, but she felt trapped. "I agree." That night, she gave Mr. David the money. He counted it and smiled. "Very good, Grace. I knew you would find a way. Now I have another surprise for you." Grace felt her heart sink. What fresh horror was coming next? "Next week I'm having a party. Some of my business friends will be there. I want you to serve drinks and entertain my guests." "What does that mean?" Grace asked, though she was afraid to know the answer. Mr. David's smile became evil. "You'll find out. Be here Saturday night at 7 p.m. And Grace? Dress nicely." Grace left that night knowing that her nightmare was getting worse, not better. She was trapped in a web of shame and fear, and she couldn't see any way out. But what Grace didn't know was that someone had been watching her struggle. Someone who would soon offer her a glimmer of hope in her darkest hour. The next Saturday evening, Grace arrived at Mr. David's house for the party, wearing her only good dress. Her hands were shaking as she walked through the front door. The house was full of rich men in expensive suits, drinking and laughing loudly. Grace felt like a trapped animal as Mr. David introduced her to his friends. "Gentlemen, this is Grace. She'll be serving drinks tonight and taking care of whatever you need." The men looked at Grace in a way that made her skin crawl. She understood now what Mr. David wanted her to do, and it was worse than anything before. But as Grace served drinks with trembling hands, she noticed another woman in the kitchen. The woman was about her age, with sad eyes and bruises on her arms that she tried to hide with long sleeves. "You must be Grace," the woman whispered when no one was looking. "I'm Linda. I work for Mr. David too." Grace looked at Linda more carefully. "Work for him? You mean?" Linda nodded sadly. "He owns me just like he owns you. I've been trapped by him for 2 years." Grace felt a shock run through her body. 2 years? There are others. "Many others," Linda whispered, glancing around to make sure no one could hear them. "He finds women who are desperate, helps them, then traps them with photos and threats. You're not the first and you won't be the last." Grace felt sick. "How many women?" "I know of at least 6 right now. Some have been with him for years. Others..." Linda's voice trailed off. "Others couldn't handle it anymore." "What do you mean?" "One woman, Olivia, tried to kill herself last year. Another woman, Jennifer, just disappeared one day. No one knows what happened to her." Grace's heart was racing. "Can't we go to the police? Can't we tell someone?" Linda shook her head. "He has photos of all of us. He has connections with important people, police, judges, politicians. Who would believe us? And even if they did, those photos would destroy our lives. Just then Mr. David appeared in the kitchen. Ladies, what are you talking about? Grace, my friends are waiting for their drinks. Grace spent the rest of that terrible night serving Mr. David's friends, knowing that Linda was somewhere else in the house, suffering just like her. But now Grace knew something important. She was not alone. A few days later, Linda found a way to contact Grace secretly. Meet me at the market tomorrow at noon, Linda whispered over the phone. Behind Mrs. Abigail's vegetable stall. I have something important to tell you. The next day, Grace met Linda as planned. Linda looked around carefully to make sure no one was watching them. Grace, I've been thinking. We can't keep living like this forever. We need to find a way to stop him. How? He has those photos. He'll destroy us if we try to fight back. Linda pulled out a small device from her bag. This is a recording device. I've been secretly recording our phone calls with him. I also save all his text messages. Grace stared at the device. You've been collecting evidence? For 6 months now. I have recordings of him threatening me, demanding money, forcing me to do things. But I need more. I need other women to come forward too. Grace felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. Do you think it could work? I don't know, but we have to try. I can't live like this anymore, and neither can you. Linda gave Grace a similar recording device. Start recording everything. Every phone call, every threat. Take pictures of any bruises or injuries. Write down dates and times of everything he does to you. Grace took the device with shaking hands. What if he finds out? Then we'll be no worse off than we are now. Grace, he's getting more dangerous. Last week, he hit me so hard that I couldn't see properly for 2 days. It's only going to get worse. Over the next month, Grace began secretly collecting evidence. She recorded Mr. David's phone calls where he threatened to expose her photos. She saved his text messages demanding money and ordering her to come to his house. She wrote down everything that happened during each terrible visit. But Linda was right. Mr. David was becoming more violent and reckless. During one visit, he slapped Grace so hard that her lips started bleeding. You're moving too slowly, he said angrily. I don't like waiting. Another time, he grabbed her arm so tightly that it left purple bruises. You belong to me, he said, squeezing harder. Don't forget that. Grace was losing hope again. Even with the evidence, she didn't see how they could ever escape. Mr. David seemed too powerful, too connected. Then one night, everything came to a breaking point. Mr. David called Grace as usual. Be here in 1 hour. I have some new friends who want to meet you. But this time, something inside Grace snapped. She was tired of being afraid. Tired of being treated like an animal. Tired of living in shame. No, Grace said quietly. What did you say? I said no. I'm not coming. Mr. David's voice became dangerous. Grace, I think you've forgotten who you're talking to. Do you want me to send those photos to your church right now? Do you want Rachel's teachers to see them tomorrow morning? Grace's hand was shaking, but she held firm. I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. Fine. You've made your choice. Within an hour, Grace's phone was buzzing with messages from people at her church, her neighbors, and even Rachel's school. Mr. David had sent the unclothed photos of her to everyone. Grace felt humiliated but also strangely free. The worst had happened and she was still alive. But Mr. David wasn't finished with her. Late that night, Grace heard loud banging on her apartment door. Open this door, Grace. Mr. David's voice shouted from outside. Grace was terrified, but she refused to open the door. Go away. Leave us alone. Open the door or I'll break it down. Finally, Grace opened the door, hoping to stop him from waking up Rachel. Mr. David pushed his way inside, his face red with anger. You think you can disobey me? You think you can embarrass me like that? Mr. David cornered Grace, his face twisted with anger. Please, Grace whispered desperately, glancing toward the bedroom. Rachel is sleeping. Don't wake her. I don't care about your daughter, he snapped. You're going to regret disrespecting me. He reached for her, but Grace pushed back, her voice breaking. No, not in my home. Not where my daughter sleeps. In the struggle, her eyes landed on a glass vase on the table. Heart racing, she grabbed it and swung with all her strength. Mr. David staggered backward, crashing to the floor. He lay still, silent. Grace froze, clutching the broken vase, her chest heaving. Had she gone too far? Just then the apartment door burst open. Johnson, Mr. David's associate, ran in and saw his boss on the floor. What did you do? Johnson shouted. Before Grace could explain, Johnson was already on his phone. Police, come quickly. A woman has attacked Mr. David. She's tried to kill him. Within minutes, flashing lights filled the room. Police officers burst through the door, finding Mr. David unconscious on the floor and Grace standing over him in shock. "Ma'am, put down the vase," one officer commanded. "It wasn't like that," Grace cried. "He attacked me first. He was trying to force himself on me." But Johnson was already spinning a different story. "She planned this," he told the officers confidently. "She called Mr. David here, and when he refused to give her money, she lost control and attacked him." The officers glanced between Grace, a struggling single mother, her clothes simple and worn, and Mr. David, a wealthy man in an expensive suit, now lying on the floor. The contrast was enough for them to jump to conclusions. "Ma'am, put down the vase," one officer ordered firmly. Before Grace could even explain, she felt cold handcuffs snap around her wrists. "You're under arrest," the officer declared. "No, please. My daughter is here. You can't leave her alone." Just then, Rachel woke up from all the noise and came out of the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Mama? What's happening? Why are there police officers here?" Grace's heart broke as she saw the confusion and fear in her daughter's eyes. "Rachel, call Mrs. Rebecca from the market. Tell her to come take care of you. Mama has to go away for a little while." "Mama, I don't understand. Where are they taking you?" As the police led Grace away in handcuffs, she heard Rachel crying behind her. It was the worst sound Grace had ever heard in her life. At the police station, Grace tried to tell the officers the truth, but no one believed her. They had already heard Johnson's version of the story, and Mr. David was a respected businessman in the community. Grace was charged with assault and put in jail to wait for her trial. Sitting in the cold jail cell that first night, Grace finally broke down and cried harder than she ever had in her life. She had tried to save herself, and now she might lose Rachel forever. 3 days later, Mrs. Rebecca brought Rachel to visit Grace in jail. Grace had never seen her daughter look so confused and hurt. Rachel sat across from Grace at the small table in the visiting room, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I don't understand what's happening. Everyone is saying terrible things about you. Mrs. Loveth from church showed me some photos on her phone and said you're a bad woman. Is it true, Mama?" Grace felt like her heart was being ripped apart. She had hoped to protect Rachel from all of this, but now her daughter had seen those horrible pictures. "Rachel, my baby, I need to tell you the truth about everything. It's going to be very hard to hear, but you're old enough now to understand." Grace took a deep breath and began to tell Rachel the whole story. She told her about Mr. David's offer when Rachel was dying in the hospital. She told her about the terrible choice she had to make. She told her about the photos and the blackmail and the months of abuse. "I did it all to save your life, my precious girl. I would do anything to keep you alive, even if it meant destroying myself." Rachel listened in silence, her eyes getting wider and wider. When Grace finished talking, Rachel was quiet for a long time. Finally, Rachel spoke, and her words cut Grace deeper than any knife. "You should have told me, Mama. You should have told me the truth. We could have found another way together. Rachel, please understand. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Rachel's voice was getting louder. "You lied to me every day. You made me think you were a good mother, but you were doing those terrible things." "Rachel, please?" "No, Mama. I trusted you. I thought you were the best mother in the world, but you're just like what everyone is saying about you." Rachel stood up from her chair, tears pouring down her face. "I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want a mother who does such disgusting things." "Rachel, wait. Please let me explain." But Rachel was already walking away with Mrs. Rebecca, who looked at Grace with disappointment and shame. Grace was left alone in the visiting room, sobbing. She had lost everything, her reputation, her freedom, and now her daughter's love. Back in her cell, Grace felt like giving up completely. What was the point of fighting anymore? Even Rachel hated her now. But 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A woman Grace had never seen before came to visit her. She was well-dressed and carried a briefcase. "Hello, Grace. My name is Barrister Sophia Brown. I'm a lawyer who helps women who have been abused." Grace looked up with tired eyes. "I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't need money from you. I heard about your case from Linda." Grace's heart jumped. "Linda? Is she okay?" "She's fine. In fact, she's the reason I'm here. She told me about Mr. David and what he's been doing to you and other women." Barrister Brown sat down and opened her briefcase. "Grace, Linda has been in contact with 5 other women who have been abused by Mr. David. She showed me the recordings you both made and the evidence you collected." Grace felt a tiny spark of hope. "The recordings? I thought the police would never believe us. The police might not have believed you alone, but 6 women with evidence? That's a different story. We're going to fight this case, Grace, and we're going to win. Over the next few days, Barrister Brown worked tirelessly to prepare Grace's defense. Linda and 3 other women came forward publicly to share their stories about Mr. David's abuse. But Grace's heart was still broken about Rachel. Every night, she cried herself to sleep, thinking about her daughter's angry words. Then 1 week later, Mrs. Rebecca came to visit Grace again. This time Rachel was with her, but the young girl looked different. Her eyes were red from crying, but she looked less angry and more sad. "Grace," Mrs. Rebecca said gently, "I think Rachel has something to say to you." Rachel sat down slowly and looked at her mother. "Mama, Linda came to see me yesterday. She told me about everything Mr. David did to her and to other women. She told me about how he tricks desperate mothers into doing things they don't want to do." Grace waited quietly, hoping that Rachel might understand. "She also told me about the recording device and how you were collecting evidence to try to stop him." Rachel's voice was shaking. "Mama, I'm sorry I said those terrible things to you. I was angry and confused, but now I understand." Grace reached across the table and took Rachel's hands. "My baby, you have nothing to be sorry for. I should have found another way. I should have been stronger." "No, Mama. Linda helped me understand that you were trying to be strong. You sacrificed yourself to save my life, and then you tried to gather evidence to stop a bad man from hurting other women." Rachel started crying again, but this time they were different tears. "Mama, you are the bravest woman I know. You went through all that pain to save me, and I said horrible things to you. Rachel, you're just a child. You shouldn't have to understand such terrible things. But I do understand now, Mama. And I forgive you. I love you so much, and I'm sorry I said I didn't want to see you anymore." Grace pulled her daughter into a hug through the bars of the visiting room, both of them crying with relief and love. "I love you too, my precious girl. More than life itself." "Mama," Rachel said, wiping her tears, "Barrister Brown says you might have to go to court soon. I want to help you. I want to tell everyone how good you are and how much you love me." Grace felt strength flowing back into her body. Her daughter believed in her again. Linda and other women were standing with her. She had a good lawyer who believed in her case. For the first time since this nightmare began, Grace felt like she might actually have a chance to win her freedom and her life back. But she knew the hardest part was still ahead. Soon she would have to face Mr. David in court, and the whole world would hear the truth about what he had done to her and so many other women. The trial would determine not just her freedom, but whether other women like her would ever get justice. 2 weeks later, Grace's trial began. The courtroom was packed with people who had heard about the case. Grace sat next to Barrister Brown, her heart beating fast with fear. Mr. David sat across the room with his expensive lawyers. He had a bandage on his head and made sure everyone could see it. Mr. David's lawyer stood up first. "Your Honor, this woman attacked my client because he refused to give her more money. She is violent and dangerous." He pointed at Mr. David's bandaged head. "Look what she did to an innocent man who was only trying to help her." Some people in the courtroom looked at Grace with disgust. When it was Barrister Brown's turn, she stood up calmly. "Your Honor, Grace William is not a criminal, she is a victim. Mr. David forced her into terrible situations and threatened her for months." She called Linda to testify. Linda walked slowly to the witness stand, shaking with fear. "Mr. David told me he would help my sick son, but first I had to sleep with him," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "When I said yes to save my child, he took my unclothed pictures and used them to control me for 2 years." Linda played a recording on her phone, and Mr. David's voice filled the courtroom. "Linda, if you don't come to my house tonight, I'm sending those pictures to your pastor tomorrow morning." The courtroom gasped. Everyone could hear the threats in his voice. 2 more women testified with similar stories. Each time Mr. David had helped them during emergencies, then trapped them with photos and blackmail. Finally, Rachel walked to the witness stand. At 12 years old, she looked so small but so brave. "My mama let a bad man hurt her just to save my life," Rachel said, her voice shaking but strong. "She worked 2 jobs and asked everyone for help, but no one had enough money for my heart surgery." Rachel looked at her mother with tears in her eyes. "My mama is a hero. She sacrificed everything for me. Any mother would do the same thing to save their child." The whole courtroom was crying as they listened to Rachel defend her mother. When all the evidence was presented, the recordings, the text messages, the testimonies from multiple women, the truth was clear. The judge looked at Mr. David, then at Grace. After hearing all the evidence, This court finds that Mrs. Grace William acted in self-defense against a man who had been abusing and blackmailing her for months. Grace held her breath. Mrs. Grace William, you are found not guilty of all charges. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Grace collapsed in her chair, crying with relief as Barrister Brown hugged her. Rachel ran to her mother and they held each other tight, both sobbing with joy. It's over, Mama, Rachel whispered. You're free. Grace looked up to see Linda and the other women smiling at her with tears in their eyes. They had all found their voices and together they had won. But the judge wasn't finished. She looked directly at Mr. David, whose face was now pale with fear. Mr. David Robert, based on the evidence presented in this court, you will be arrested and charged with blackmail, sexual assault and coercion of multiple women. Justice will be served. As the police handcuffed Mr. David, Grace realized that her nightmare was finally over. She was free, Rachel still loved her, and other women would be safe from this terrible man. Walking out of the courthouse with Rachel's hand in hers, Grace felt the sun on her face for the first time in months. They had survived the darkest time of their lives and now they could start over. Mama, Rachel said softly, I'm proud of you for being so brave. Grace squeezed her daughter's hand. We were both brave, my baby. And now we're both free. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.